everyone. So real quick, this is a weird story, and it was brought to us by one of our mods, Paco. And so we're going to talk about this because I actually didn't know who this person was, but this is a thing. So here goes. Retired Navy SEAL, made famous after coming out as trans, announces detransition, destroyed my life. I destroyed my life. I am not a victim. I did this to myself, but I had help. Retired Navy SEAL said. We're going to skip right past that video because we don't give a hell about those people. Detransitioner Kat Kattinson joined the Ingram Angle to explain several risks and side effects of puberty blockers despite Planned Parenthood saying they are safe. A retired Navy SEAL who became famous nearly 10 years ago after coming out as transgender announced he is detransitioning and called on Americans to wake up to how transgender health services are hurting children. Everything you see on CNN was in my with my face. Do not even believe a word of it. Chris Beck, formerly known as Kristen Beck, told conservative influencer Robbie Starbuck in an interview published earlier this month. Oh, Failure, thank you so much for the tier 1 sub. An interview published earlier this month. Everything that had happened to me for the last 10 years destroyed my life. I destroyed my life. I'm not a victim. I did this to myself, but I had help. I take full responsibility, he continued. I went on CNN and everything else, and that's why I'm here now. I'm trying to correct that. Beck gained notoriety. Notice Fox using that word, notoriety. In 2013, when he spoke with CNN's Anderson Cooper about transitioning to be a woman. You want to read this next part?
Yeah, are the blue separate titles?
They're different links. Well, yeah.
Oh, okay. I was confused for a second because I was like, wait a minute, this is a
yeah, ignore those.
Separate one. All right. I was very naive. I was in a really bad way, and I got taken advantage of. I got propagandized. I got used badly by a lot of people who had knowledge way beyond me. They knew what they were doing. I didn't, he said during the interview. Beck served in the Navy for 20 years, including on SEAL Team 6. He was deployed 13 times and received more than 50 medals and ribbons for his service.
Yep. So,
Chris Beck, a former Navy SEAL, speaks during a rally. Oh, here's the article. Beck said he's speaking out about transgenderism to protect children in the current political climate, that there are gender clinics over all of America. There are thousands of gender clinics being put up all over America, he said. As soon as kids go in and say, I'm a tomboy, or this makes me feel comfortable, and then a psychologist says, oh, you're transgender. And then the next day you're on hormones. The same hormones they're using for medical castration for pedophiles. Now they are giving this to healthy 13-year-olds. Does this seem right, he asked? This is why I'm trying to tell America to wake up. Do you want to tackle some of this?
Yeah.
Before we go on. So we can definitely see some of the talking points already.
I mean, this is pretty standard, right?
Yeah. Well, and we're talking about getting puberty blockers the next day. No, that's completely false. It's not how that process works. There's a decently long process. Some would argue it's longer than it needs to be in certain cases, too. About getting puberty blockers. Like, there's quite a few different professionals, quite a lot of different checks making from people making sure that this is the course that they want to go, and all puberty blockers do is buy kids more time to make a decision.
Yeah, so let's break through this real quick. Transgender former Navy SEAL Kristen Beck speaks during a conference organized by the ACLU in the Palm Center in Washington on October 20th, 2014. Right there. Beck said that I hate using this pronoun for this person, but I guess they're detransitioning, so I'll respect the pronoun. When he began transitioning, it took just an hour-long meeting at the Veteran Affairs to be offered hormones. I know this is demonstrably false. In talking with Lady Raincloud, who is a former soldier, this is utterly nonsensical. I walked into a psychologist's office, and in one day, I have a letter in my hand saying I was transgender. I was authorized hormones, and I was authorized all this other stuff. Because you are doing informed consent, most likely. You were informed of what the logistics were. You made the choice. Right?
Well,
I had so much... Oh, go ahead.
Oh, what's really hard to hear about this is I've had other friends transition either before or after they were in the military. And like, it was really cool because they actually could transition. Like, that was actually a thing that they could do. Right? And so it really sucks to see this narrative going on.
Yeah. So we'll just finish this up real quick. I had so much going wrong in my system when I started taking those, he added. Some of that was paid for by the VA, and I'm sorry to the American people that I did that. That no one cares. Beck said that he had been off hormones for about 7 years now. This is a $1 billion industry between psychologists, between surgeries, between hormones, between chemicals, between follow-up treatments, chemicals, just chemicals, like the idea of a chemical, like oxygen, like just basic chemistry. That's the problem.
People need their medications. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, where are these 1,000 gender clinics? Because I have some referrals to make. Right. He continued, there are thousands of gender clinics popping up all over the country, and each of those gender clinics is going to be pulling in around 50 million. Citation needed. So let's go through these arguments real quick because I think this is important to break down. So again, this person's anecdotal experience does not matter at all. Not even a little bit. This is why. Detransitioners are 1% of a 1% population, given all the numbers. Trans people stand somewhere between, depending on the generation, 2 to 1% of the population. That may sound like a small amount, but we're literally talking about 33 million people in the United States, give or take. 1% of those detransition, and usually for social reasons, usually issues of money,
social pressure, lack of support.
Exactly.
Lack of money to continue treatment. Yeah. Exactly.
Very few people detransition because they're not trans. Now, this person clearly did, though. What's interesting is they're basically just doing all the right-wing talking points. This is no different than Caitlyn Jenner.
Well, the problem is that we see a lot, when you see the big transitioners like this and get a lot of media attention, a lot of times there are turf groups helping get this messaging out there, right? Crafting this message in a certain way, making sure that it sounds reasonable enough.
And spreading the lie of rapid onset gender dysphoria, which is one of their big lies. I want to be really clear. Rapid onset gender dysphoria has no data to actually support it. Excuse me, my voice squeaked. The one piece of research that was done on it is essentially just based on survey, and it was from surveys places like Mumsnet. It is utterly biased, utterly reprehensible. Everyone from Sasha Yad to any other person that touts it should not be a practicing clinician. Full stop. I do not want conservatives in my profession. I don't. So, rapid onset gender dysphoria is just utterly false. And so the problem is these are the types of lies these people come up with because they want to have some level of legitimacy. Notice the things that are being said here. This person was basically forced online and basically had, basically had their face pasted everywhere. And essentially they're trying to say they're not a victim, but they're still using the language of someone claiming victimhood. And they say they're taking full responsibility by trying to correct this now. But the problem is this comes off as just propaganda spreading. Surveys of parents of trans people, but one trans person who was actually surveyed. Yeah, not one person that was actually surveyed. Yeah, exactly. Right? So I was very naive. I was taken care of. I was propagandized. No, this is not what happened. This is not in any way, shape, or form. This is an anecdotal experience at best. If this person had been, I guess, somehow cajoled into going through this, they would still experience gender dysphoria if they started to transition. This person had clearly experienced something by going through these. Like, it's not like all of a sudden they just stopped their hormones. Clearly they stopped for whatever reason, probably for whatever this grift is. But the fact is that this person was showing symptoms, met with a therapist. They were considered to be a functional adult, if I'm understanding this correctly, right? Because where is this? Do we see this person's
scroll
age?
Down. I think it was, I haven't seen the age yet.
Yeah,
so we're talking about, actually, that is another thing to point out. When you see a discrepancy in talking about kids and hormones and kids and puberty blockers versus usually the adult who's telling the story, this is one of the discrepancies that TERFs use. It's harder to find kids and get them out in the media and all of that because you got releases and shit to deal with. But they can get adults to go spread this around in all sorts of ways. So
Yeah.
that is a discrepancy to look for.
Also, Scout brings up a really wonderful point. I didn't know a Navy SEAL could be naive. Also, Anna McLaughlin would take this fool to school. True. Anna McLaughlin is also a former soldier, and also she's super cute, and she's a fucking MMA fighter.
No, I do find that weird, though. Like, this person has all of this experience, but also doesn't know how to research.
Literally 50 ribbons as a, 50 ribbons? Where is it? 50 medals and ribbons for his service, deployed 13 times. This is a Navy SEAL. Team 6, including on SEAL Team 6, this person is considered to be they're 56, so meaning 10 years ago they stopped. Yeah, so they were in their early 40s. I can tell you right now, if you're a 40-year-old coming in there and you are showing signs of gender dysphoria, I'm not going to try to put up roadblocks on you. Sorry, that's just not what's going to happen. I expect you to be a functional adult to be able to make these decisions. And in every single letter I write, I actually go through and talk to my client directly. Here are the things this is going to do to your body. Do you know what all of my clients say? They literally are basically that meme of Obi-Wan going, that's why I'm here. They want those effects. So again, this is a highly intelligent, or at least semi, at least to some degree expertise-based, intelligent person who is considered pretty damn good in their field, and yet they were somehow propagandized to? By who? In the Navy? I don't remember our Navy being real big on transgenderism. So right now and there, this falls apart.
Well, and there's a piece in here, too, that matches up with your expertise where they were talking about they went to the psychologist and just got a letter that said they were trans.
Mm-hmm.
Like, isn't that not how the diagnosis can be gender dysphoria, right? But you're trans because you say you are. You're not trans because somebody else told you so.
Yeah. It's not like they just said you were transgender. We can't actually diagnose you that. If you go, I would like tits and I would like to actually, be perceived as a woman, that is gender dysphoria. And then what we tell you is, okay, here are your options to deal with that gender dysphoria. One of them is medical intervention, but that's not the only one we talk about. Mm-hmm. Some people want to just socially transition. They don't want medicine. Like, these are things talked about. And especially with teenagers, same thing. Oh God, this guy got his hormones from Planned Parenthood with informed consent. This just assume this is how this works for kids. Well, no, they said they went to the VA, if memory serves.
Yeah, they went to the VA and apparently got it within a day.
But again, speaking out against Planned Parenthood, Planned Parenthood does informed consent with adults. They don't see kids, to my knowledge. Arrow Nocturne says, I didn't actually know rapid onset gender dysphoria wasn't a thing. Thank you so much for clarifying. I know I typed that late. I apologize. No apology necessary. One thing to be really clear is rapid onset gender dysphoria is just demonstrable nonsense because it is based purely on the idea of social contagion. That is, it is based on the notion that somehow by being in contact with other trans people, you are going to catch the trans.
Like the flu.
Yeah. Basically, your kid wanders onto a Discord server and meets a non-binary kid, and now they are struck with the trans. What actually happens is this is a representation issue. Your kid may not know that trans people or non-binary people exist. Non-binary people are trans, but I'm not going to get in that argument now. But essentially, they meet people who are gender nonconforming, or at least assigned gender nonconforming, and essentially realize that that's an option.
Yep. And they start asking questions and start doing personal exploration and have a chance to learn about others and therefore learn about themselves. So. Oh,
you're calling this bitch a liar? That's what I'm saying as well. Their framing of themselves as a victim is actually nonsense because they're clearly they clearly are working from a place of expertise. Mm-hmm. And are incredibly knowledgeable in their field. When they walked in there, they were a fully functional adult and knew exactly what they were doing. That's what I was saying. I was agreeing with you, Miss Pandagal. Moving on, again, you only can do informed consent if you're an adult, or I would assume emancipated, but I don't know enough about law to make that argument. The problem, again, is that TERFs tout nonsense. These are lies. These are nonsense because they actually not how gender-affirming care works. You just make so much of my life make sense. Well, I appreciate that. We love you and we hope you're safe and good.
We do have a video all about rapid onset gender dysphoria and breaking that down.
It's me basically yelling about Sasha Ayad for an hour and a half.
Yes, and I think there's another one with Kreese, our one of our mod team.
Oh, going over Littman's next research. Yep.
Yep. So we do have a few videos directly on this topic that will break things down even further.
Yeah, no, Oxide Lounge says it perfectly. It's a light bulb moment, not an infection. Correct. So again, let's be super clear.
We read this chunk.
Yeah, real quick, I want to look at these. Here to protect children. Again, protect children. We just talked about Shoe on Head and the framing of LGBT people as groomers. Shoe literally basically called drag queens groomers. Protect children. People make connections even if you don't string them together. So again, when you say that you have to protect children and then you use terms such as grooming, right? Especially saying we're giving them, the same hormones they are using to medically castrate for pedophiles. Now they are giving this to healthy 13-year-olds. I need to double check on this. Can someone do a quick Google search for me and tell me if that's actually how they do chemical castration? Because I thought they used other stuff, not freaking anti-androgens. Can someone please give me a verification on that?
People get stuff about hormones confused all the time. Like, spirolactone, one that is used for, what's the class of spirolactone again?
Anti-androgen?
Yeah, anti-androgen. That also could be used in cis women to reduce acne and a few other things. Right? Like, if your acne is super, super bad, no, it can help suppress T and reduce that for you, right? Like, a lot of these things have multiple uses, or there's a bunch of different types of estrogen, okay? Like, when we're talking about birth control, and you hear estrogen, that's not the same thing that we're talking about when we're talking about, like, estrogen that trans women are taking to transition, but yet they've got really similar names, okay? So there's a whole bunch of stuff all in these classes that are slightly, that are different enough and do different things and different doses that you really can't just start comparing random stuff to each other. Yeah.
So real quick, just so people can see this, this is probably a thing. So chemical castration is also known as medical castration or hormone therapy. It is used to treat some prostate and breast cancers. It is reversible. That's for adults, maybe, depending on how long you've been on it. But one of the things that's interesting about this that I was looking over is this is given as a way to stop sex offenders. I actually beg the question, is there data out there that shows if this works or not? Because I actually don't know, but I would be really curious as to see, because again, that particular paraphilia isn't based on sexual orientation. It's something very, very different and very, very problematic. I guess what I'm trying to say is pedophilia by its nature is not, in some ways, it's not sex in and of itself. It is a power dynamic that is being sexualized. It is a way in which you are acting. And the problem is that this is why you have really weird, inconsistent stuff. Like, for example, someone can be absolutely heterosexual in regards to their behavior with their adult partners, but if they're, someone who's engaging, who is in fact diagnosed with, pedophilia, they may only go after same-sex boys. That isn't because they're suddenly bi or, they're actually gay. It's actually because it has nothing to do with sexual orientation. Like, this is just the case. So again, this idea that, like, I'd be really curious how effective this is. But again, yeah, male sex hormones are androgens, yeah. So, okay, these are used for this. That's important for us to recognize. You receive these drugs as injections or implants in your skin. Drugs in this category available in the US include... None of these drugs are spirolactone or bicalumide. I think that's how it's pronounced.
Well,
Wait, what?
Again, there's a whole lot of other stuff that these things do. Like, anti-androgen, okay. GnRH antagonist is one of the things that you can use to suppress, it's one of the last ditch efforts in PMDD treatment when you medically induce menopause to stop your cycle from happening and therefore stop PMDD, which is premenstrual dysphoria disorder, right? Like, there's a lot of things that this class can do besides what you're seeing here. That doesn't mean that the whole thing is bad. Ketoconazole gets prescribed all the time with skin issues, and like, it's coming up on this list.
Yeah, also, I'd have to look more into these drugs. Bacalimide's right there, but like, again, like, none of these look like spirolactone. And again, like, that's the highest thing that is prescribed for this. So again, like, it's another series of lies. And again, I'd want.
And even that article was saying, if you're looking for, if you won't go back.
Transitioning?
I don't know if it said specifically. Over here, this middle article, if lowering testosterone is the goal, you and your provider might discuss orchidectomy. Yeah. So, a surgical procedure that will permanently reduce the level of testosterone in your body. Yeah, there's multiple reasons you could do this, okay?
Although, again, they may have to still put you on a supplement for testosterone because your body having no hormone in it, no sexual hormone in it, is not good for you.
Yes. Yep.
I did find this. Lady Raincloud brings up what is this? This is a study. It says, there's a comment on the study that says surgical castration reports produces definitive results, even in repeat pedophilic offenders, by reducing recidivism rates to 2% to 5% comparatively to the expected rate of 50%, but that's surgical, not chemical. Interesting.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting. Someone in chat said this seems like eugenics. I don't think that's the case, because the problem is they're not trying to stop these people from
having children.
They're not from producing children. They're trying to stop them from having the urge to engage in sexuality. That just seems to be the side, more of a side effect rather than an intention, but I could be wrong on that. Anyway, this idea that like a kid just walks into a place, says they're a tomboy, or this makes me uncomfortable, and the psychologist says, oh, you're transgendered, like bibbity bobbity boo, you're trans. This is not the case. Like, I really need people to understand this. These are the same hormones they're using for medical castration pedophiles. We just looked this up. That doesn't seem to be the case. Even though there's one in common, I would want to look at the dosages, and I'd want to see specifically the differences in what you'd give, say, a 13-year-old kid versus, say, a person who's on sex offender registry. Also, notice the use of the word healthy. This is a regular thing that right-leaning people throw out, is that to some degree we're doing this to a healthy kid, because their perception is that a kid on hormone blockers or an adult who's gone through gender-affirming surgeries is somehow unhealthy. Notice that language. Essentially what they're trying to point out is that we're taking a healthy kid and making them not so, when that's not the case. In fact, healthy would probably come down to certain, I would assume, questions of context, because if that kid mentally isn't doing well, doesn't matter how physically healthy they are, they're still going to be struggling. First, although chemical castration is potentially lifelong for some offenders, it might allow sexual offenders to have normal sexual activity in context with psychotherapy. That's good to know, actually. We'll have to look more into that at some point.
Yeah.
But
again, it's still like,
I
think that's a really good, this stuff is all, it's good to understand the other side of what's going on, because this is the factual side and the stuff that they are muddling in this the entire time, right? They're taking stuff that could look potentially right, but it's not, and you have to go dig and find the research to understand it, but that's part of the grift here. Also,
I walked into a psychologist's office, and in one day I have a letter in my hand saying I was transgender. I was authorized hormones and was authorized all this other stuff. So here's what I want to say. You weren't authorized all this other stuff. Yeah, thank you, Lady Ravenclaw. That was perfect. What happened is you said you were experiencing the symptoms that correlate with gender dysphoria, and that is generally correlated with being transgender or some kind of gender nonconforming, and you asked for a letter for hormones. They weren't offered, you asked for them, and a letter was provided to you. Now, every single time you wanted to do any of this other stuff, you needed another letter. One letter doesn't do it. Anyone that knows WPATH 7 knows you're lying.
Oh, heck, we just talked about how many letters you needed.
Yeah, I need 1 from my doctor and 2 from 2 separate therapists. I'm down to 1 left. God, I want WPATH 8 to come out. But again, these are roadblocks created by the medical to stop people from transitioning. They're not helpful. That's the reason why the WPATH standards have now lowered this, because the fact of the matter is that this number of necessary letters isn't, there's no evidence to show that this is like this rampant case.
Actually, like, this is actually doing more good than harm. So.
Yeah. So again, there's not this rampant thing of detransitioners. Detransitioners are by definition basically a rarity of a rarity. And to say that they are by definition in any way representative of the general trans population is to be engaging in this meme. Because essentially what it comes down to is that, just like the meme kind of points out, what happens is detransitioners come out, start talking shit about trans people, either because of internalized transphobia or because they're on a right-wing grift, and then basically are given every camera and every mic they can from right-leaning media when there are hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of happy trans people. Look at the number of people who are happy with their SRS. As far as trans women, didn't we see it was like upwards of 80 to 90%?
Yeah, yeah.
Like,
and a lot of times, and then the other chunk of that percentage was, if they weren't unhappy, it wasn't because they got SRS, it was because they were dealing with
complications, or their doctor botched the surgery, or some other piece, some other issue. Mm-hmm. Again, detransitioners are fine, and detransitioners should be, in my humble opinion, welcomed into the community and absolutely celebrated for, coming to an understanding of who they are. That's cool. The problem is that by all rights, the ones that come out like this, no, these people are by definition are basically engaging in a grift for the specific point of, again, harming children. Because we know what the outcomes are. When people do not have access to life-saving, medically necessary gender-affirming care, it causes mental health issues, depression, and eventually, in some cases, suicide. As every stupid transphobe tries to remind us, the percentage on that, with the right circumstances, or the very wrong ones in this case, does not end well. And so the reality is that we are talking about the number of conservative detransitioners who really dislike trans people and think that we're terrible groomers. You're talking about a minority of a minority of a minority of a minority. Gender affirming care is not harmful. Gender affirming care is absolutely medically necessary. This is true by APA standards, the other APA standards, the AMA, and anyone else that has any kind of accredited knowledge in the fields of psychology or medicine.
Yep.
This is not protecting children. Stories like this do harm to children. And conflating gender-affirming care with grooming is going to just continually make more stochastic terrorism happen.
Well, and a lot of these titles, even all of this, are so misleading. Everything else to click on is super misleading.
Well, it's all clickbait.
Yeah, yeah.
It's all clickbait to continue feeding the outrage machine that is Fox News' stuff. So,
yeah.
The point being, guys, is we love you. And whether you transition or you detransition or you're cis or you're whatever, we love you. Being someone who comes to the realization that being trans is for you, that's fine. Generally speaking, this is one of the reasons why we kind of say try out hormones for a little bit, see how you feel on them, make changes based on that. Now, sometimes people don't want to wait. Sometimes they feel really pushed to do things. And I don't mean pushed by others, by whatever internal forces sort of make them trans. You don't go to a butcher to get a surgery prematurely unless you really want that. No one's paying for this for you, right? And the idea that this person who's a Navy SEAL was given hormones and that is upset because the American taxpayer paid for this. Good. That's gender affirming care. I want us to pay for that. That's good, actually. Look, hormone blockers do not harm kids. They just don't. The data to show that they quote unquote do is really sketchy. Really sketchy. And the fact is that like, while there are, again, off cases that are probably a minority of a minority, the average person just isn't hurt by these things. And again, conservatives want to frame hurt in one particular way than another. The biggest way is that they want to frame it as you're harming these kids because they could end up sterilized or whatnot. But again, these are all things that are discussed and talked about. Oh, Saga Vaughn, thank you so much for subscribing. Mm-hmm. But yeah, long story short, guys, this stuff is lies. Please don't fall for it. Please don't believe this stuff. These people actively have an agenda. They actively want to stop trans people from existing. And the right figured out a long time ago that tokenism helps its efforts. Look what they're doing with Kanye.
Yep.
So with that said, we'll see you in the next one. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe. Also, consider donating to us. You can support us on our website, transgirltherapist.org. You can also help us on our Patreon, link below, or you can become a member here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching.